It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. We are joined on our Zoom Newsmaker line right now by our very good friend, the editor of the Michigan news source, Cheryl Fritz. Welcome, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Good morning, Michael Patrick.
Well, Cheryl, I have that same question. What is going on in Michigan? We had an announcement yesterday that the most nondescript senator in the United States Senate, I'm talking about Senator Gary Peters, Democrat from Michigan, I guess he read the political tea leaves and he made an important announcement. Tell us what that announcement was, and then tell us what the implications of that are.
Well, the implications are great. The announcement that Gary Peters made is that he would not run again for a third term in 2026. He is the senior Democratic senator for the state of Michigan. So as you alluded to, it sets up a mad scramble for both Democrats and Republicans to run for that seat.
Also open seat, the governor's seat is open. Big Gretchen Whitmer, who fancies herself one of the Charlie's Angels, I guess, from that famous picture that she did with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General there. She is not going to be running for governor. I suppose she could run for Senate. So the governor's seat is open. Let's talk about the Senate first.
Sure, absolutely. Well, go ahead.
I'm hearing a couple names on the Democrat side. One, I suppose Gretchen Whitmer, has she said she won't run for the Senate? Maybe she did. I don't know.
Well, she made the reason you may not have heard about it is you probably don't watch The View, but she was on The View a day or so ago. I had to read about it as well. She was on The View and told the ladies of The View, and I use the term ladies loosely, that she would not be running for this U.S. Senate seat, but she did not rule out a run for president.
Of course she's going to run for president because she looks at the field there and says, well, that's a terrible field. I'm better than a terrible field. She might be right. She might be better than but she's still pretty terrible. Back to the Senate. On the Democrat side, former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, former presidential candidate, former Secretary of Transportation under Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, has, I guess, moved to Traverse City, Michigan, and now is considering apparently running for the Senate from Michigan as a Democrat. Is that correct?
That is what you're hearing is correct. He has been quoted as saying he is seriously considering it. Some would call him a carpetbagger. He and his husband moved to Traverse City a couple of years ago. The talk at the time of that move was that he was eyeing Governor Whitmer, who was termed out of the governor's mansion, eyeing her governor's seat. Well, this gives him another place to go play, and that's in the U.S. Senate. So, yes, he has said he is seriously considering a run for the Senate now.
Now, the issue of carpetbagger has some poignance here in Tennessee because after the Civil War, a lot of Yankees came down to Tennessee to run things after the Civil War, and they literally carried bags made of carpet, hence the term carpetbagger. And it is clearly a pejorative term. It has a lot of impact in the South. What kind of impact does the term carpetbagger have in Michigan?
Well, I do appreciate the historical reference. I love history. So I do appreciate that. And I did not use the term loosely. I am aware of its implications. And at the time when he and his husband and their two children moved to Traverse City, that was the talk at the time, that he's eyeing the governor's mansion in the future, looking beyond. Maybe he read the tea leaves and saw what was happening in the Democratic Party, although I doubt it, and said, what's my next move? So, he's lived there for a couple of years. He's been in Washington most of the time. So how invested is he in Michigan? I guess time will tell.
Any other Democrats thinking of running for the Senate seat?
A couple of names that have come up are U.S. Representative Haley Stevens and Hillary Scholten. they don't have a lot of name recognition. They'd
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of work to do. Gary Peters did not resign. He just will finish his term out in 26. So there's still 2 years for him to finish what he says is his work and for those to get on board who are looking at it.
So right now, is there a front runner on the Democrat side?
I would say Buttigieg would be the front runner. He's the name mentioned the most with the
Mm-hmm.
governor, with Governor Whitmer saying no, thank you. So I would say that he is probably the front runner in name recognition on the Dem side.
Okay, Republican side, I'm going to throw a name out there. I saw it and I said, I didn't even know this fellow was connected to Michigan. I saw a former NFL coach and NBC football analyst, Tony Dungy. I saw that name. Did you see that name also for the GOP?
We did. We discussed this yesterday. A lot of people don't know he came from Jackson, Michigan, which is about 40 minutes south of Lansing, the capital of
Hmm.
Michigan. So he has deep roots in Jackson, Michigan, but he has lived in Tampa, Florida with his family for a long time. So he included would have to come back to Michigan in order to do this.
How about that? That looks like a long shot, right? I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
now Tudor Dixon, who seemed to have run for pretty much every office you possibly can in Michigan and has a lot of visibility on
Yeah.
Fox News and others. And she's got a podcast now that with the Clay Travis and Clay and Buck network. Um, I've heard her say that she's looking at both running for governor and running for Senate. Is she seriously looking at the Senate race?
We haven't seen much about her running for the Senate race. The talk for quite a while now has been the governor's race. She hasn't officially put her name in the hat for that one either. But like I said, this scrambled the field. Everybody who was eyeing the governorship now has two seats to take a look at, and where can they be most useful for their parties, I guess is what the consideration is. Some other Republican names are Mike Rogers, former U.S. Representative. He was narrowly beaten by Alyssa Slotkin, excuse me, for the U.S. Senate seat. She is Michigan's other Democratic
Mm-hmm.
senator, and also Pete Heisinger. So
Wow.
there's a couple of Republicans out there.
Yeah, but Pete's got a job as ambassador to Canada right now, right?
That's true. Bill Heisinger. No,
Oh,
Bill Heisinger. My
Bill Heisinger.
apologies.
Okay,
Bill
gotcha.
Heisinger.
Okay, well, we'll see how that'll play. Okay, how about governor? What's the deal there? Who's on the Democrat side? Who's on the Republican side?
Well, let's see. We've got Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, who got off to a rather rocky start. We had an article this week. She announced her candidacy and her run for governor in her office building, which is a
That's a
state office
no-no, isn't
building.
it?
Of course it is.
I mean,
Now,
you would
what
think a statewide official would know that.
She is the Secretary of State
Yeah.
currently. And she stood in there and she actually, in one of her quotes, when people at the interview, at her announcement, media were saying, isn't this against campaign finance laws announcing this in your office building? And she said, oh, no one made me aware of that. It's cold outside. That was her response. The
Oh,
Attorney General, Dana Nessel, is now supposedly investigating that. But again, you alluded to the Charlie's Angels picture that
yeah.
I've shared with you of the three of them. So how far that goes, we don't know. There have been a couple of complaints filed against her for this.
On the Republican side, I guess so. Tudor Dixon would be the name for governor we've seen most often. Anyone else looking at it from Republican or Independent side? We got about a minute left here, Cheryl.
Absolutely. Republican U.S. Representative John James
Mm-hmm.
would be an excellent candidate, and he is looking at the governor's race as well. So I'm encouraged that Michigan has some good candidates to put up for governor in the state of Michigan in a couple of years to get a running start.
And last comment: what happened to the Detroit Lions?
Isn't that something?
It's
See, I
sad.
tend to try to be a glass half full person.
There you go.
You know
Next
that.
year. Next
Remember
year.
that saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that saying, don't cry because it happens or because it's over, smile because it happened. So that's how I looked at it.
There
An
you
incredible
go.
couple of years.
Cheryl Fritz, thanks for joining us, the Michigan News Source. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
All right. We'll be back with more what's going on in Washington in the confirmation hearings. We got it We got it fresh, hot off the presses. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.
Hey, I'm Governor Bill Lee, and I want to talk to you about an important education bill in Tennessee. Everyone knows that education has the power to change the trajectory of a child's life forever. And anyone who's raised a child knows that each one's different in their educational needs, and their learning styles, and their talents. The fact is, parents know their own children best. They know what's best for their education and their future. That's why I'm here to talk to you about Tennessee's Education Freedom Act. It empowers parents across our state to use their tax dollars to choose the school that allows their child to thrive, regardless of zip code or income, all while making significant investments in Tennessee's public education. If you want to learn how you can help make the Education Freedom Act a reality in Tennessee, go to educationfreedomact.com and write or call your state representatives. It's educationfreedomact.com.
This ad is paid for by Job Creators Network.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of The Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. Well, it's time for the clownish confirmation hearings where the Democrats make fools of themselves. Yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nominee to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Trump administration, appeared before one Senate committee, and today he's going before a second. Also, confirmation hearings today for Tulsi Gabbard to be the Director of National Intelligence and Kash Patel to be the Director of FBI. I'm going to go back to this clip yesterday, which sort of illustrates how crazy the Democrats have begun. And of course, the craziest of the crazy, Pocahontas, who, as you know, falsely claimed to have Native American ancestry. And it's actually a descendant of the Tennessee militia that rounded up the Cherokees in the 1830s. I documented that, by the way. I'm an amateur genealogist. I wrote a story at Breitbart 2012 that had that. It was just, beyond hilarious. But anyways, here she is kind of haranguing as a scold Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the hearings yesterday. Clip one.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
no,
and I'm not going to agree to that,
drug
Senator.
Companies as much as you want.
I'm not going to agree to not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS, and I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as Secretary will also benefit you financially down the line.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies.
Okay, can you stand listening to her? No, I am not. Oh my goodness. Fingernails on a chalkboard are easier to listen to than that. We'll get to, so then there's Bernie Sanders. And by the way, in this hearing yesterday, right behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Cheryl Hines, the actress who you've seen on some HBO specials. Curb Your Enthusiasm, right, exactly. And then Megyn Kelly was there as well to indicate her support. But Bernie Sanders, he asked the silliest question. And we'll just play right now. Here's RFK Jr. Being harangued this time by Bernie Sanders. Here we go.
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Healthcare a human right? Is healthcare a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
yeah.
I would say it's different because if with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool. Well, and so are you guaranteed the same right, or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry. I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here. All right. Every other country on earth says healthcare, whether you're poor or rich, young or old, to human right. I'm not hearing you say that. All right. You've talked about the drug companies, and maybe we...
Okay, so then he went on to say there was some group that had a little baby, diaper, they call it a onesie, that had something about the vaccine. And he made a big deal about, are you in favor of this onesie? And Kennedy looked at him like, how old are you, Bernie? It was just hilarious. What a clown show that has become. Okay, so right now, today, let's move forward to today. Tulsi Gabbard was testifying just about 30 minutes ago, and we have her opening statement. Let's hear Tulsi Gabbard, who is the Trump administration nominee to be the Director of National Intelligence.
The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. Okay, so
Tulsi is that a very strong opening statement. By the way, stylistically, Tulsi looked fabulous. Okay, she's very attractive. And she's got that black hair with a little gray streak. I don't know what they call that thing. But she's really kind of a stunning look. And again, I'm not a fashion guy. I'm just telling you, looking at this right now, she had a white blouse and a white jacket, and it was just very, very significantly different in terms of, I don't know, the whole sense of all of the Trump nominees is they're put together, they're sharp, they're on point, and in her opening statement, she really made that point. All right, another nominee we got to get to, Kash Patel, who is a candidate to be the head of the FBI. Kash Patel was confirmed and was in these confirmation hearings. We'll get this clip number 23 to get started.
Senator, this may be one of the scenarios that most uniquely qualifies me to take command at the FBI. Having been the victim of government overreach and a weaponized system of justice and law enforcement, I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. And as the Biden Inspector General determined, those activities by the FBI and DOJ were wholly improper and not predicated upon law and facts. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost, financially and personally.
Okay, I'm all in favor of that. All in favor of that. All right, when we come back, our good friend Mark Pulliam is going to give us some commentary on the American ambassador to the European Union, Brentwood, Tennessee's own Andy Puzder. Andy has written a book, and it's kind of smash mouth America First. Back with Mark Pulliam after this.
My fellow Americans, I was this close, very close, to buying from the lumber yards. These are sick people. But I turned my head at the last second, and I saw a big, beautiful ad for D.T. McCall's. These are highly respected people. If I had not turned my head at the last second, I would have been ripped off at some lumber yard for $200 in hidden charges, and D.T. McCall and Sons are never going to do that. They'd never do that to you. These are great people. I've known them for a long time. They have great deals, and I just have to say, nobody knows deals like I do. D.T. McCall & Sons has locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, and they have been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years. These are tremendous people. D.T. McCall & Sons. Check out one of their stores today.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. We are joined on our Zoom Newsmaker line right now by our favorite retired attorney, Mark Pulliam, a graduate of the University of Texas School of Law, practiced law in California for decades, saw the light, moved to Tennessee, and now enjoys freedom in our no state income tax state. Also, you blog at Misrule of Law, and you have a book review of a fellow Tennessean, Andy Puzder, very successful guy, who was a former CEO of a bunch of restaurants, Carl's and Hardee's. CKE Restaurants is the name of the company. Also recently named ambassador to the European Union. The book, A Tyranny for the Good of Its Victims. Tell us about that, Mark Pulliam.
Well, Andy Posner is not just a fellow Tennessean. He is a resident of the Nashville area. And the book he's written is a very important book, taking on these Wall Street giants. Everybody's talking about BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. He calls them the big three. These are the passive investors that a lot of retirees and retirement funds invest their 401ks in index funds, which they manage. And these are supposed to be beneficial to investors because of their low fees, and they perform better than a managed fund. But there's a trap, and that is BlackRock in particular is led by some progressive activists. Larry Fink is the CEO, and they concocted this thing called stakeholder capitalism, which would replace shareholder capitalism. You know, the traditional understanding is that corporations exist for the benefit of the shareholders, the owners, and exist to make as much money as possible to generate a profit for the shareholders. Larry Fink had a better idea and said, no, corporations should be crusaders, and these crusaders should be operating on behalf of everybody in the world who has a stake. That would be consumers, suppliers, employees, everybody. And if that reduces or even eliminates profits, well, so what? And they call this agenda ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And they've done all kinds of goofy things in the last decade or so, pushing for workplace quotas, affirmative action on corporate boards, and so forth. And as a result, these ESG funds have been significantly less profitable than these corporations, than the stock should be. They've done things like use their voting power, and they have this voting power because the individual investors in these index funds are not technically the owners of the underlying shares. These fund managers are. So they vote these funds, even though it's not their money, to engage in these social activism games. So they pushed Exxon. They got 3 people elected to the board of Exxon and got Exxon, which is the world's largest oil producer, to agree to net zero emissions from fossil fuels, basically foregoing fossil fuels. And as I said in my review, this would be like telling a fast food company, McDonald's, to go vegan, or to tell a big tech company to forego electricity. It fundamentally eviscerates the whole business model. So Andy Posner has been fighting this for years. He's the leader of what he calls the resistance, the group of people who are fighting this. And the group consists of red state legislators, some attorneys general in red states, including our own Jonathan Skrmetti, Tennessee Attorney General. And recently, Jonathan Skrmetti sued BlackRock, claiming that they were misleading Tennessee consumers by claiming to be in the business of investing their money to earn a maximum return, when in fact he was using it to chase after his social justice agenda. And after bringing that suit, even though BlackRock has all the money in the world and could hire the best lawyers in the world, BlackRock agreed to a settlement capitulating to many of the things that Attorney General Skrmetti was objecting to.
Yeah, that was a great success by Attorney General Skrmetti. Now, interesting about Andy Posner. So he wrote this book, and it's very well reviewed by you and very well documented. Andy had been, I think, nominated first time around to be Donald Trump's, I think it was Secretary of Labor. And and they had I don't know, he had like somebody who worked at his house, a domestic assistant, who was not properly, they didn't pay the taxes or something like that, right? So he withdrew. Okay. Now he's been nominated to be the ambassador to the European Union. I think that also does require Senate confirmation, but To me, and I think Andy's going to come in there and, really take it to the European Union about how they're basically undermining our economic growth in ways that are very devious. But having said that, if I had a choice and somebody said, would you rather be ambassador to the European Union or Secretary of Labor? That would be a no-brainer for me. I'd rather be ambassador to the European Union. Your thoughts on that?
Mark?
I
agree. So he got lynched when Trump nominated him for Secretary of Labor 8 years ago because the labor unions hated him. He's one of these people who believes very firmly in free market economics, opposed increasing the minimum wage, was opposed to Obamacare, and thought that we should repeal it. And so they just hated him for that. And so he had the business about his housekeeper. He also had a messy divorce. And just like often happens, that opposition research dredges stuff out of the divorce file, even though it was exaggerated or fabricated at the time. But the foreword to his book, so I think he'll do a great job as ambassador of European Union. One of the things that the person who ultimately was Secretary of Labor, Eugene Scalia, late in his service to the president and at the end of Trump's term, enacted some regulations under ERISA, which would forbid retirement funds from investing in the so-called ESG funds that minimize shareholder returns. The first thing that Biden did when he took over was to freeze and then repeal those regulations. But I have hope that in Trump 2.0, we're going to see a return of this, and that would take a lot of the air out of this balloon of ESG investing.
Yeah, Eugene Scalia was actually he's the son of the great Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, right?
Yes, he was, and a terrific labor and employment lawyer.
Exactly. You're about to say something else there.
So the book has a foreword by Andy Puzder's good friend Art Laffer, who
another
is
Tennessean.
Californian.
And by the way,
excuse me,
another Tennessean, and like you, Mark, he saw the light, but he saw the light back. I think didn't he move here in 1984 from California? I think he did.
A long time ago.
A long time ago.
So he was one of the first refugees, and he became one of these missionaries urging people to move to Tennessee because he thought Tennessee would, and it was based on Art Laffer's advice, among other things, that lured my wife and me to come here 5 years ago.
Well, but tell also our listener why Art Laffer is famous as an economist.
Well, he popularized a concept that's very well known and well established in economics, the idea that as you raise prices, you get less return or less demand. And so he came up and drew it on the back of a cocktail napkin when Reagan was running for president or had just gotten elected, and it was so-called Laffer curve. And the significance of this was, according to basic principles of economics, if you raise tax rates too high, you will actually reduce the amount of tax revenue that you generate because you will disincentivize people from engaging in productive work. And conversely, by lowering the rates, you can actually increase tax revenues because you incentivize people to engage in productive work. And so this was one of the intellectual underpinnings of the Reagan tax cuts. And so he's considered to be one of the fathers or godfathers, at least, to supply side economics.
Yeah, exactly. So, by the way, have you, Mark Pulliam, been watching any of these confirmation hearings up in Washington? And my reaction is these Democrat senators look all like a bunch of silly, ridiculous clowns with their gotcha, 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 gotcha questions.
It's not the most attractive show of the Democratic face, and you got a lot of hysteria, a lot of people with their hair on fire, people yelling and screaming and shouting, and I think that already the Democratic Party approval numbers are at like 22%, and they're only going to get lower if they keep this stuff up.
Well, my question is, this is the broader question to close out the interview. Where does the Democrat Party, which is, a dinosaur and bereft of any new ideas, where do they go in the future? What kind of policies could they support, A, and B, who might emerge as sort of the champion of those new policies?
Well, I think the answer has to be that you will never get a majority behind a lunatic fringe extremist point of view, and that's what the Democratic Party has come to represent. But you go back to the 90s, Bill Clinton emerged as the new Democrat. And what made him a new Democrat is that he was fairly sensible. He was a centrist.
He wasn't a lunatic.
He wasn't a lunatic. And when he was president, but this was with a Republican Congress and so forth, he balanced the budget. We had basically peace and prosperity. But the Democrats need to find their way, and they need to accept the fact that, all of this crazy stuff, transgender this, DEI, all of these things, the American public doesn't want it. And as long as they're behind that, they're going to keep losing.
I think
and
you're exactly
frankly,
right.
I hope they do keep losing.
I'm with you. Mark Pulliam, our favorite retired attorney, who writes at the blog Misrule of Law. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right, we'll have more when we get back. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy. Our site, TennesseeStar.com, TennesseeStar.com.
Hey, I'm Governor Bill Leahy, and I want to talk to you about an important education bill in Tennessee. Everyone knows that education has the power to change the trajectory of a child's life forever. And anyone who's raised a child knows that each one's different in their educational needs, and their learning styles, and their talents. The fact is, parents know their own children best. They know what's best for their education and their future. That's why I'm here to talk to you about Tennessee's Education Freedom Act. It empowers parents across our state to use their tax dollars to choose the school that allows their child to thrive, regardless of zip code or income, all while making significant investments in Tennessee's public education. If you want to learn how you can help make the Education Freedom Act a reality in Tennessee, go to educationfreedomact.com and write or call your state representatives. It's educationfreedomact.com.
This ad is paid for by Job Creators Network.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. Just a reminder, here in Tennessee, sometime in the next several hours, there will be a vote in the Tennessee House of Representatives on the Education Freedom Act. We're expecting right now that'll pass narrowly, 52, 53, 54 votes, something like that. You need 50. And as soon as that breaks, if it breaks during the program, we'll let you know. A couple of things in this fast-moving world of news. Yesterday, President Trump signed the Laken Riley Act, and we have the clip of Laken Riley. Of course, she was murdered by an illegal from Venezuela, allegedly, and her mother spoke at a press conference yesterday with President Trump. Here we go, clip 4.
We also want to thank President Trump for the promises he made to us. He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken. And he hasn't. He's a man of his word. We trust that he will fight for the American people. Most importantly, I want to thank our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because without his sacrifices, Laken's story would have ended on that horrific day that she was taken from us.
And that was the...
But because of him, we can continue living knowing that we will see Laken again.
And that's, Mom, very emotional. That was the first bill signed by President Trump in his second term, and it was very powerful, moving emotionally. There she was, the mom, giving that talk, and the president stood right next to her, and he reached out and he touched her on the shoulder as she started crying, and, very empathetic, very powerful scene. All right. Also, we've been talking a lot about the dying dinosaur regime media and how just idiotic they are. Nothing illustrates that more than the interview on Good Morning America between Michael Strahan, who the former NFL football player who's turned into like a media personality, obviously a very good football player, not exactly a top of the line when it comes to understanding politics and complex issues. And I think his questioning of Caroline Leavitt yesterday illustrates that. Here we go. Clip 3, Michael Strahan on Good Morning America asking a dopey question of Caroline Leavitt, and she really took it to him.
But is there any concern that we risk losing people with years of experience like doctors and let's say scientists?
Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment, and that's what this administration expects, and I think that's what American taxpayers expect. Don't forget, it's the American people who are funding this government, and they deserve people who are actually showing up to work on their behalf.
Yeah, I mean, what he's trying to say is, mean Donald Trump. He sent out this email to like 2 million federal employees and said, okay, you got to show up for work in person. And there's various reports that, the majority of them aren't showing up for work or working from home. Wink, wink. He said, well, what about the doctors that we might lose? And she said, doctors need to show up at the hospital, don't they, Michael? So a very good display by Caroline Leavitt there. The other thing I want to talk about is last night, again, fast-moving news. Sean Hannity had an exclusive interview with Vice President J.D. Vance. It was a very good interview, and actually, after it's a two-part interview. He played a good chunk of it until about like 8:45, and then he was going to bring Caroline Leavitt in to talk about her first press conference and how great a job she did on Tuesday. But moments before that, this tragic plane crash happened in Washington, D.C., and they pivoted from it. But I wanted to play this question and answer. Sean Hannity, J.D. Vance, and by the way, I think this was conducted at the Naval Observatory, which is the official residence of the vice president, because when you see the clip, you'll see in back there's some naval stuff in the background. All right, here we go. J.D. Vance.
There's something very deranged in the mind of the far left in this country where I really do think that they feel more of a sense of compassion for illegal aliens who have no right to be in this country than they do their fellow citizens, and that really has to change. And you know, when Selena Gomez had her viral moment, and of course there were a lot of other celebrities who weighed in, I had people sending me photos of little kids, sometimes kids the same age as my little children. We've got, of course, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
It was a great scene, by the way. When
Thank you.
Your son's playing with your hair.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But you know, kids similar age to my children who were murdered by criminal aliens in the United States of America. And as an American leader, but also just as an American citizen, your compassion belongs first to your fellow citizens. It doesn't mean you hate people from outside of your own borders, but there's this old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country. And then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America first. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership. And President Trump...
Amen to that, brother. When we come back in the Tennessee Bonus Hour, we'll hear from the greatest national political reporter in the country, Neil W. McCabe. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy. Our website, TennesseeStar.com, TennesseeStar.com. Back after the news.